further ado, I'm leaving it up to you, Klil. Everyone give Klil a hand. Alright, so yes, I'm Dr. Klil H, PhD. My PhD is in physics. I'm a software engineer at FlyInside Inc, virtual reality flight simulation. I'm speaking in personal capacity. That means it's all my opinions and my views and not the views of the company. I understand that's important to express. And again, my PhD is in physics, so I have to warn you that a lot of what I'm talking about is highly speculative, because I don't have a PhD in what I'm going to be talking about. So the topic is immersion, fiction, history, and virtual reality. This is how the talk is going to go. So I'm going to introduce some terms, immersion, what is virtual reality, and so forth. I'm going to go over virtual reality in fiction, and at least the selection thereof. I'm going to go over history of virtual reality headsets specifically. Then I'm going to talk about immersion without headsets. I'm going to talk about a test case that I really like called Project Cybersyn. It's something that happened in Chile. It's very interesting. Syn is from synchronicity or synergy, not anything else. And then I'll conclude. So, what is immersion? Immersion is a sense of full engagement in some kind of an activity or a world. And when your immersion, when it requires, when you have after initial mediation with this activity or world, you need to suspend your disbelief. You know, certain things are going to be completely fake, and you're going to know usually that they're very fake, but you can allow them to be real. I mean, you're looking at a screen and you see pictures of fighting armies, and you suspend your disbelief and you believe that these are actually armies you need to care about. Or you go to a play, you see actors, they're clearly not killing each other, but you suspend your disbelief and say, yes, this person is pretending to be dead, and I'm going to just take it that they are dead, and I will let myself be carried away and be immersed in the world in which this person is dead. Virtual reality is a set of tools for sensory immersion. And that means that your natural inputs and outputs, your eyes, your ears, your hands, depending on the system, they're replaced by artificial means. In this case, it's hard to suspend disbelief, because this goes around your ability to filter. You get, instead of seeing something and having the ability to interpret it as something different, you have your view of the world replaced by something artificial. So we'll get into the problems with that later. But those are the two big terms that are going to follow us, and the friction between them is going to follow us this whole talk. So, what types of virtual reality are there? So, unqualified virtual reality, when people usually say virtual reality, this is a virtual reality system, they usually mean that the user is transported into the virtual world. There's something that's created inside the computer, for the most part, and all these tools, 3D headsets, bodysuits, holography, whatever, transports the person inside, makes their senses feel as if they're inside this other world. There's also augmented reality, which is when you take reality and you enrich it with virtual items. This is done by glasses like Google Glass or Microsoft HoloLens. You can use it with tablets or smartphones. You have ordinary projections like this thing. This is augmented reality. We're augmenting this. I mean, on some level, we're augmenting this wall with pictures that come from a computer, and we're also augmenting it separately with this laser. And then suddenly this is getting into your world. And you can use speakers all around you to change the. Yes?
Pokemon Go.
Yes, Pokemon Go. I mean, I had a version with smartphones, but yeah, smartphones have a lot of augmented reality apps these days, most famously Pokemon Go. But like I said, there's a lot of different ways, and I'm usually talking about visuals because visuals is what is frankly what I'm most familiar with. But there's also a sense of audio. You can have speakers around a certain space that add sounds that aren't that don't naturally emanate from what's around you to change your view of the world to add more information. And then there's telepresence, which is when you're translating your senses and control from a distant machine or a close machine that's very small. that usually requires some kind of 3D headset or screen. Controllers usually need some kind of force feedback so that you get a tactile response to movements, either delicate movements, something very small, or movements far away in some kind of an industrial robot inside of a hazardous situation. Now let's look at some depictions of this virtual reality in fiction. So this one's an early one. This is The Machine Stops, published by Ian Forster in 1909. It's a short story. It depicts a world, it's a dystopia that depicts a world where people live in isolated rooms, and these replace the natural reality. Instead of people going out and meeting each other, they interact through a machine. It replaces screens fold out of the walls, what he would use in 1909 is gramophones coming out of the walls and stuff like that. You can communicate, you can attend lectures virtually, you didn't use that term, but virtually. You can have conferences, all of it through this machine that everybody is in a cell of. And it's a dystopia. Civilization depends on this machine. It starts collapsing. Nobody understands why. Everybody's immersed in it so much that they can't really deal with it as something they can fix. It collapses, and spoiler alert, it collapses, and civilization collapses with it. And this is an example of virtual reality mediating between people and the world. But that's not VR as we usually know it. The first VR headset description, or something close to it, I think in fiction is, I'm going to pronounce this the way my brain wants to pronounce this, Pygmalion's Spectacles, by Stanley G. Weinbaum, published in 1935, another short story. It describes a 3D headset with 3D glasses and sounds and smell and airflow, but it goes beyond that. The protagonist puts this helmet on, sits down, and when the experience starts, he's in this, suddenly he's transported into this other world. When the experience starts, he feels the arms of the chair he's in. But after a while, because of all this sensory input that's been replaced, he doesn't feel it anymore. He actually feels reality beyond the senses that are explicitly taken over. The experience is pre-recorded. Again, spoiler alert. It's not like what we're used to now, where you can actually change anything. It's looking at something. It's an experience that's happening, that's been recorded beforehand. And when experience deteriorates, the weird fluid or whatever technobabble was behind this starts collapsing. It causes some kind of it makes him very dizzy. He I think throws away or falls down because he suddenly the shock of going back into reality is very unpleasant, and that's kind of an example of simulation sickness, which we'll see later as well. This is an example of virtual reality as entertainment. We had it as mediated between people in the world, something useful, maybe too useful, and here it's entertainment. It's something for fun. It's the next step after film, which is interesting because in reality the story was very close, but we'll get it. Waldo, by Robert A. Heinlein, 1942, I think a novella. It's the first example of telepresence, and it names these telepresence systems Waldo, and people actually use this term today, and it's trademarked by some company. And basically the idea is the protagonist becomes wealthy through controlling robots. He invents these robots that allow him to do a lot of delicate work from afar, and then he uses them to create smaller robotic systems that let him create smaller robotic systems until they get microscopic. There's a kind of a singularity of progressive miniaturization through recursive remote control. So that's I think it's really the first example of telepresence. And then another one is that one I heard, Waldo. The Naked Sun is novel by Asimov, came out in 1957. It's the second in the Elijah Bailey series of whodunits with androids and robots in space. It takes place in a space colony. The spacers, people who live in space colonies, are isolated. They communicate with each other holographically. They have these holographic systems that similar to the machine stops in the sense of the dystopic idea that this is something bad, but also I didn't know this here, but they also use robots a lot. On some level, that's also telepresence in the sense that they have this machinery that's doing things for them and mediates between them and the world in a more distributed way. And then we have the iconic virtual reality novel, Neuromancer, published by Gibson in 1984. It depicts virtual reality, it calls it The Matrix. You may have seen a movie with that title. The Matrix depicts computers and the connections between them. That's what's represented when you get into it. And it requires sensory immersion of human and virtual reality. You have to connect yourself to the system to actually engage with the virtual world. The way it's technically done is a combination of direct neural interface that basically takes over your sensory inputs, or rather bypasses them. And there's some keyboard keyboard input output from the input to the computer that's also used for programming. It doesn't really go into details. Virtual reality is a serious business, this neural interface. There's also something called SimStim, which is when you sensory immerse in another person's experience. And that's used for entertainment, and hackers using the virtual reality systems to program and hack whatever. The jockeys kind of look down on people who use SimStim because it's a very passive experience versus the more active virtual reality neural interfaces. There's another novel from the 80s, Ender's Game, published by Orson Scott Carr in 1985. It has 3 examples of virtual reality. It's very interesting in that respect. The plot has children being recruited into this command school, and they get split up into units, and they fight each other in virtual battles. Well, some of virtual battles. So they're augmented reality battles. They go into these training rooms. These training rooms are really weightless. They're in the middle of this space station. So there's some kind of technology that makes them actually weightless. But then there's a bunch of augmented reality things that come in there. They have a bunch of objects that stand in for space debris, and they also have these suits and laser rifles. And laser rifles don't kill you, but if the laser rifle hits the suit, that part of the suit gets frozen in place. And that's how they simulate you getting hurt without you really getting hurt. So it's there's a bit of augmented reality there. There's kind of a psychological virtual reality game that people can play on these weird tablets that some have used holographics to replace your senses. Not necessarily technologically accurate, but that's what the technology is in the book. And there's also remote control of armies that are in several star systems, and that's what the students are trained for, to command all these armies. And they use the way they do that is using something that's faked and what's called an Ansible, which is this magical Deus Ex Machina that allows them to communicate with instantaneously beyond the speed of light. But yeah, so these are 3 types of virtual reality there, and they're all some of them are for training, some of them are actually important in the real world. And that's a very interesting book in that sense, in many things. And then there's from the 90s Snow Crash, published by Neal Stephenson, 1992, kind of a satire of cyberpunk. So it presents a metaverse, which is a different take on the Matrix, so the idea of virtual, a fully fledged virtual world. It's based on full sensory immersion, but you can use a 2-dimensional interface for programming, especially if you have, if you're low on, I think, communication, like if you don't have a lot of communication bandwidth, or if you don't have a lot of computational power, you can go down to the older interfaces. The virtual geography inside of the metaverse reflects real estate in a set world. So in Matrix, it was somewhat of a representation of how computers were connected to each other. Here it's some kind of a set world, I guess kind of like something like World of Warcraft or Second Life, but a certain piece of virtual estate, I guess, not real estate, where you have to buy or somehow get ownership of certain places. And the reason it's important to the location is important is because having virtual proximity is essential for interpersonal closeness. Two people who are using the computer need to actually feel that to see themselves close to each other. So having good real estate so that people don't have to move too much to get too close to you in the virtual world is paramount. The interface itself, it involves projecting images to a helmet, so it's really similar to HoloLens. How it's controlled isn't very clear in the book, and I read it recently. So it seems like there's some kind of keyboard mouse thing, but also that there's some kind of motion control. There's a scene where there's a sword fight, and on the one hand, the protagonist is called hero protagonist. It's a satire. Please don't take it too seriously. Hero has this sword fight, and one of the reasons he does well, aside from being really good at sword fighting because he's the protagonist, is also because he wrote the sword fighting program. But on the other hand, when he's taken away from it, when somebody turns off the system, he's surrounded by a crowd of people who are looking at him as he has his actual swords, because obviously he walks around with swords everywhere. Out to fight, and people are standing back for him. So there's some kind of a hybrid here that isn't really dug into in the book of motion control and keyboards, and it's not very clear, but it's not the important part of the talk. There's also augmented realities introduced through these gargoyles. They augment reality in a way that's kind of like Google Glass, but a bit more so. They look at things and they get information from the metaverse. Now seen as just a network of information overlaid over it. And the distinct thing about them is they have this laser that scans retinas, and then they look at somebody, scan their retina, and then they get all the information in various information sources about them. And they're mocked for looking really silly and not being kind of out there, because they have the augmented reality thing. They're not connected to the world. A little. So, that was partial listing of fiction. I didn't go into movies, I didn't go into a lot of other media. But let's look at some of the interfaces. So, we had the interactive room, like the machine stops. We had neural interface, like a Neuromancer. We had a graphic interface, like the Naked Sun or Ender's Game. We had headsets, and Pygmalion's spectacles and Snow Crash. And current technology, the latter, the headsets, the 3D headsets are very prominent, so that's why that's why my historical focus is going to be on how these develop. And there's a few cliches in a lot of these works, and a lot of driving ideas. That replacing the real with virtual is essential to human-machine interface. You have this sense of progress towards replacing more and more of reality with virtual. And then also that you need that to feel close to other users. So kind of the idea is that it's the ideal of immersion. So we'll see how that goes. So now, VR headsets. How do they go in history? So, they have a similar history to how it went in fiction. Entertainment, military training, education, research is kind of more its direction went. So it's hard to get them to be authentic, and we're getting close to having them really be authentic, and it's really more like what's emotion issues that I talked about earlier, and I'll talk about it later as well. So let's go to this partial history. So the first VR headset-ish thing that came out is the Sensorama, Morton, Heilig. The patent is from 1962, developed earlier. This was kind of like the Spectacle is supposed to be the next step in the cinema. So a cinematic experience was recorded, video, audio, smell, air. It's not a headset per se. You're sit inside of it and you put your head into it. It doesn't move. It's pre-recorded, and it's there's a lot. The area, the angle of view that you get is really very wide. The frames per second is just cinematic, whatever the cinema was doing back then, which I think is 24 frames per second. That didn't have head tracking. This did. So sort of Damocles, called because of this huge thing that you had to put on your head while you were using it, which was somewhat intimidating. It was very unsettling apparently. So this mechanical thing traced how you were moving by physically tracing how you were moving. It was. That's what they had. From '68 by developing Ivan Sutherland and MIT, I want to say. It had some video and audio. It didn't have all the smell, vision, and all of that other stuff because it was used for interface research and so forth. And we're going to jump all the way to the 90s. So the last time there was this big boom in VR was in the 90s. I still remember some of that. Not this thing, I remember something else, but this is closest to what we're getting today in the technologies that were back then. So there was a VFX1 headgear developed by Forte Tech Incorporated came out in 1995. They're actually in Rochester, I think. They're now, I forgot the name of the company that they've become since then. So this thing was based on magnetic tracking, so it didn't have a weird mechanical thing on your head. Magnetic tracking meant that you had to actually tell the computer where you were in the world, so it would know where it would expect magnetic north to be, and then track according to that. So it wasn't all that accurate. It provided video and audio. It supported a few games. The resolution for pair I was terrible. Frame per second were okay, but this is smaller than a nice VGA screen from back then.
It could probably power no Polo.
Yeah. And the angle of view was 34 degrees per eye, more or less. So it basically looked like you had these two screens in front of you, like this screen in 3D. So the binocular wasn't all that good. And it had some kind of motion control that you get some angles of movement and some buttons. So getting to the Rift was a huge jump. It's almost 20 years since then. Now this is more or less the technology we have now. And most of you are more or less familiar with it. While we do have magnetic tracking these days, there's also optical with these sensors and accelerometers and a bunch of stuff. The resolution is way better, way more frames per second, angle of view is a bit better. And there's the interfaces are leap motion and touch, and I'll get into the motion controls later. Those are the main ones for the Oculus Rift. And there's similar ones, there's the Vive, there's Windows and mixed reality, but on some level they're very similar in how they work. So what we look for in terms of the future of these things, right now in terms of where we see limitation, because I use these at work, and this is what we develop around. These things need to be cheaper. Our resolution needs to go higher and actually be useful higher, and that's not just a matter of the headsets themselves, it's also the graphics. The graphics cards need to get better. Inside out sensing, like with the Windows mixed reality that came out right now, is really good because it removes one more thing that you have to set up before you can actually start using them. You don't have to have an external sensor anymore when it does inside out sensing. But the real feature would be when it's tetherless, when you be able to take something and now you have something that almost gets us there. I mean, we do have tetherless in the sense that we have, Gear VR, and we have Google Baker and all of those, but they're not at the same level of technology as the Rift and the Windows Mixed Reality and all of those. So, a combination of those is what we look forward to. Touch and motion controls. So, These have this history that's kind of parallel to the headsets. Those can control the computer intuitively. It's kind of like taking the idea that was behind the mouse, which was taking motion and turning that into motion in the computer instead of having to type things and have that translated into action by the computer. And joysticks is a similar idea, but taking that to the next level. The first consumer version of that was the Nintendo Power Glove, and that didn't work out very well, even though it was featured in the feature film. It did not come with, it did not come packaged with the game in itself, like you had to buy it separately. And ultimately, I think there were 2 games developed for it. There were very few games that actually used it, so it's hard to really get into a certain a new product when there's not a lot of software around it. I think the practice not very good. I read the Wiimote was way more successful. It had it came with the Wii. It came packaged with the nice games and worked very well. They corresponded to how it worked. Sony and Microsoft tried to get into that once they saw that. I think once they saw that Wii was working, or it might have been percolating this at the same time, trying to get back into motion controls. It didn't go that well, and the Xbox Kinect became more of a platform for studying sensors and robotic vision and all of that, rather than the people actually using it for playing games. Again, something to do with the accuracy of tracking and having good applications that are relevant to it. But the thing is, touch and motion controls are vital for virtual reality, because when you have all your senses replaced by something else, that again, it creates problems with mediation. It takes you away from it to have a keyboard that you don't see. So at the very least, you need to have your keyboard in there. And you can have some video, you can have yourself seen through these glasses, but then it removes some of the immersion into that. But I mean, the successful virtual reality applications now, for the most part, will have to use motion controls. So the few major ones that are available today, there's Leap Motion that came out in 2014. Many of you have used it. It has an infrared camera and it detects your hands, creates a virtual model of them that you can then use in your application. It allows a wide range of gestures, but it looks from the outside, and that's a bad angle for seeing a lot of details of your hand movements. And it doesn't, and your hands disappear. It doesn't have, I forgot the term for it, but your hands disappear when they're out of view. And that's bad for applications that we like in flight simulators. When you're flying a plane, you really want your hands to still be there when you're not looking. There's a lot going on in the cockpit. The Oculus Touch came out in 2017. I think there were demo models in 2016 perhaps. These are handheld controllers. They're tracked parallel to how your head is tracked, so you don't have to look at them. They still exist beyond your view. They have limited gestures that come from where you pick your fingers and so forth, and pressing triggers and so forth. They block your hands, so it's kind of a commitment. Once you have them in your hands, it's not easy to use them and then use something else if you want to combine things. And they have some vibrational haptics. And haptics are when your system provides a response, or when you have a joystick that resists your movement according to how an aircraft is going. So here they have some vibrational system that you can use to feel that you're touching a wall without looking. Translates it, but it's a limited form of haptics. A more involved system of haptics, this I haven't had a chance to play around with because I think it's very expensive. It's the Dexmo. It started coming out in these in 2014. It's a feedback glove. It tracks. It has an independent tracking, so you don't have to look at it to track it. It has touch and resistance, and it doesn't have elbow pressure. So when you're pressing down on something, you're touching with your finger, but really you feel it. I mean, the more power the more force you apply, you'll feel it more. You feel it all over. You feel it in your elbow. You feel it in your shoulder. You feel it all over because the response is for your whole body that's being held down by gravity. So I'm sure that this is very good for some forms of training, but you have to keep in mind that it's not simply everything in the experience. physically. So the future of those, and that's very important. It's very important in FlyInside. We have better, cheaper systems, smaller footprint, no handprint, so they don't. They're not a thing that you have to commit to too much by using them. Improved and articulated haptics, not just them vibrating in certain positions, but actually giving you specific sensory input. Texture for touch, ideally. Also, resistance to remove them. It would be interesting to have convenient and accurate full body motion controls, and there were a lot of there were a few experimental systems with whole body suits, but that gets to the point where it's difficult to get into consumer version because of just how difficult that is to set up at home. And locomotion is a big thing. So locomotion is you moving yourself around, and one way of kind of simulating that is kind of like it's combining whatever you're doing with kind of like a treadmill or a Stairmaster, but something that would rotate and you wouldn't notice that you're actually on this treadmill. And some systems are based upon that, but again, that starts getting more intrusive in terms of how much of your house or how much of your work area needs to be taken into account when you're doing it. So yeah. But let's, so that's all, so that's, we've covered a trajectory of 3 headsets and virtual reality, but what about immersion without headsets? So immersion is very wide. You can be immersed in many media. So you can be immersed in a good book. If a novel is well written, or well written for the genre you're reading, you can be pulled into an imagined world. If you're a writer, you can express your emotions and your views and your feelings and turn them into something that you can communicate to somebody else. And when you're a reader, you can empathize. That's pretend I didn't misspell that. Empathize with characters, and the world comes to life. Suddenly, you imagine dragons, and you imagine a lot of things that aren't in front of you. You have to be literate to actually be able to read. You need to learn some conventions and metaphors. And your brain is performing most of the sensory rendering. You're really suspending disbelief to an extreme. You're believing that these words on a page, lines over usually black or white, actually represent an entirely three-dimensional world, or beyond that, depending on what you're reading. So some computer interactions have taken that as their starting point. So beginning there were text adventures like Adventure, Zork, and that series was very popular. Parser-based adventure games came from that, where the computer would start visualizing things for you instead of describing them, but you'd still have to actually type in what you're doing. So until you were authoring what's going to happen next. And then interactive novels are popular to this very day, where sometimes you'll parse certain things, but mostly you basically select what you're going to do. And a lot of the information is carried by text, despite the fact that now you'll have visuals, you'll have sound effects, and a lot of things, but a lot of it will come from text, and these weird patterns that your brain translates into meaning. This is a bit of a sidestep. It's immersion in a male-based community, which is a term that I invented, and probably there's a better term for that. But basically, this is the idea is that there are certain communities that used to be built on political mailing lists and comics and genre fandoms. People would send letters to the other, people would send pamphlets to each other, and become part of a community. And then they would meet. In many cases, they would then meet. But in many cases, all it was exchanged was text and maybe some drawings. That created a sense of community. People, if you're literate enough and you understood the cultural and political context, what you read, what you saw, was translated into all these, this reality of a community and what these people think and how these people are that we've never met. And most of the social networking and hierarchy of the network is your brain is creating them from words that you're reading, but it's not diagrammed for you, and you're not sensing it directly, or usually in the usual case. Like you're not in a meeting room and talking to these people. You're sending things back and forth and building up this concept in your brain. And there are a lot of computer interactions that were built up from this type of idea. There were email lists and listservs. There were BBSs, bulletin board systems that started on some level working as electronic bulletin boards. People would post notes for each other. And then that became technologically more and more advanced. There's Usenet, which was sort of like a mailing list on some level. I don't know how to describe this exactly. It's kind of slightly before my time. And then there's all these web forums where you can, which are kind of an elaboration of that model, where you can have threads where you discuss things. But again, you're seeing text or you're seeing certain image icons, and you're translating that into this is this personality of this person, this is a person that's actually living there, this is a community of people that are actually there. And of course, there's Facebook and Twitter that make a lot of these things that you used to do some kind of haphazardly automatic, reaching out to other people that will tell you, oh, there's other people that are kind of like the people you've already reached out to, and so forth. And there's immersion in theater. So if you have a well-written play, you have good direction, good actors, good stage production, you can get moved by a play. When you're an actor, I'm not sure how I've had the experience of acting, I've done some amateur acting. If everything works out, you become the character. Your actions and your reactions become a natural part of what you're doing. You immerse yourself in this character. If you're a spectator and you've watched a good theater performance, a good opera, a good musical, you're actually right, isn't it? Empathize with the character and engage with the plot. See, it's improving with every slide. Your requirements are usually to understand the language, cultural context, people's body language, the scenery and the lights, and music. They engage the senses, right? But like I said at the beginning of this talk, the brain has to suspend disbelief in filling gaps. So if you're an actor, you see that you're behind the scenes and you're walking into a stage and there's an audience and lights and a bunch of stuff. You see a lot of the details that even the audience doesn't see. And then you find yourself transformed into the character and you immerse yourself in this experience. Despite the fact that right in front of you there's lighting, there isn't any lighting in the reality of the scene that you're immersed in. If you're in the audience, you see the stage, you see the seats in front, to the side of you and in front of you. You talk to the person who's by you, but you suspend disbelief to engage in and immerse yourself in what's going on in the plot. If you can, if it's right here. In computer interactions that are kind of like that take aspects from that, there's computerized role-playing games. The role-playing games themselves, as a non-computerized activity, also take a lot of that. But the computer will allow you to experience certain aspects of a certain character and get you immersed in either playing it or believing that it's a character that has all these emotions and all of these powers. Chat rooms and forums, you can sometimes act in them and role play in them, and the idea is that you're looking at text on the screen and you picture yourself immersed in some kind of a conversation or some kind of action. This developed before MMORPGs like World of Warcraft or for that EverQuest and so forth. You had moos and muds that were mostly, in the beginning, they were text-based. People would describe things. They were kind of like the text adventures with 4 people. And this is a more boring example, but a kind of important one, I think. So immersion in earlier office work. So well-organized and managed office helps you be productive, helps you be part of office in larger term, and of course, within a company. You have a desk with an outfit, a physical desk. You have draft paper, there's memos, there's a calendar, there's reminders. If you're in the admin area, you have assistants that type up things for you, they send and receive information. You have seats to host people who visit other parts of the hierarchy of the organization you're in. You have a telephone, which is a bit technological, but it's on a computer, to call these people and for them to call back and visit with them. And you take all of these things and you turn and immerse yourself in being part of this, this organization that's bigger than you, and which the parts of which you don't see directly. It's all mediated by all this thing, and you suspend disbelief in this piece of paper that has some words on it stands for, this is a meeting I need to get to, or I will not get this bonus end of the year. And now we have computerized office work. This drove a lot of computer progress, really. Word processors, paint, and drafting programs replace both a lot of the doodling, although I still do but you can do a lot more fancier doodling and fancier drafting, depending on the kind of office you're in, and write documents, and you no longer usually have somebody typing things up for you. Most of you will be using Gmail or Outlook or something like that. It's an integrated contact book and email and calendar, and it has all these reminders and sending information out and taking information in and knowing who other people in the organization you're in and your other contacts outside of the organization are. It's all more computerized. And then there's chat, voice, video, chat like Slack or Discord. I guess companies use Discord. Skype. And voice video conferencing, you can use them to coordinate, you can use them to transport people into your office and vice versa. Not as far as having them holographically here, but good enough. And all that, there's a lot of mediation, and here there's a lot of, it's still, you're reading words on a screen and saying, okay, yeah, this is an actual structure of an office I'm in, even though you're just in one office, the company you're in. And yeah, so all these needed some suspension of disbelief. You need to ignore glaring problems. This is clearly not an event that I need to go to because it's a piece of paper, but it represents something else, and I take it seriously. It triggers the idea that, okay, this is something that happens in the future. This contact name is another person. They exist out there. Despite the fact that I don't see them at the very instant. I'm in the theater, and a person's holding what's clearly a wooden sword. That's not going to be killing anybody unless they hit them hard over the head. But I accept that it stands in for something, and I immerse myself in what it stands in for. And in most computerized settings, you have some of that. Even if you're playing World of Warcraft on the latest graphics settings, you're still looking at a screen with pictures on it. And you're saying, well, I'm actually this night elf, and I'm killing things. I don't know, I've never played it. I imagine you kill things more than you create things. And then we go back to VR, which I haven't talked about in a while. What is suspension of disbelief in VR? The computer is taking over some of our senses. And that's a big step. Makes it difficult. It's difficult to put filters and to contextualize things that are projected directly into your eyes. You have the danger of simulation sickness and the need for motion control, because what you would normally be able to say, for example, in the standard way of playing first-person shooters is with a keyboard and mouse, right? So you have this keyboard and you have this mouse, and they move you around. And these are not you moving your head, yourself around to look around. These are moving the screen itself stays in place and the image moves, but you've taken this whole thing into I'm moving myself around and I'm moving back and forth. But it's still all very mediated in a way that when you have your headset, it becomes a bit trickier. If you want to look behind you, if you rotate too many times clockwise or counterclockwise, you're going to get the cable wrapped around you. It's suddenly invading where you are, and it's having to constantly keep these things in mind while they're not visible to you. You're not making the choice of saying, okay, I'm going to ignore this for now. I'm going to pretend that this is a screen. You have all of this, and you have to remind yourself, oh, this is actually not. I'm not actually looking around. If it's well designed, if it's poorly designed, you have a bunch of this sensory. You have all this sensory stuff in a way that you weren't expecting, and it's very hard to deal with, and that leads to simulation sickness. That means when you have too low frame rate, if the reaction time is too low, it's not just a matter of you getting frustrated, it can make you physically ill. So if you wanted to have immersion with this sensory replacement, you have to have a really good understanding of perception. And yeah, like I said, if you fail in VR, there's simulation sickness, and then what happens? And again, this is part of when you're designing some kind of virtual reality experience. It's hard to adapt. So you're as a user, it's not hard to adapt, filter, and harmonize. Like if there's something that's annoying to do in Excel or something like that, or if some kind of a hand movement starts affecting your hands, you can ergonomize. You can say, okay, well, instead of using this keyboard, I'm going to use a keyboard that's more ergonomic. I'm going to use a better chair. But if you're given a headset and it works poorly, there's not a lot you can do to kind of upgrade it. I mean, whoever designs it, if you're designing it, you have to make sure that all these things work. If something is working very slow, and it's, there's some kind of a curve between how fidelous it is versus how many details there are. There's balance. It's not, as a user, it's hard for you to control that. And if you have something that fails at that, it's not just a matter of you, okay, well, I'll work on this spreadsheet for like 10 minutes and then it'll take a while, and then I'll go back and I'll do some other things. I mean, first of all, if you have a VR headset, you have to take it on, take it off, get into it. There's a certain barrier to that. But also, if you want to have some kind of theatrical or television-like experience, you want to sit down for an hour and watch something nice on TV, like it's hard to do if that part of it isn't working very well. It doesn't quite have a lot to do with how the experience maybe was. It might not be the important part for you as a television producer. So a lot of social games and MMOs require you to be either constantly online or on for a very long time, or constantly more or less online if you're having a long conversation on social media, and you can do that while you're traveling in a hopefully not when you're traveling in a car, but when you're traveling in public transportation, between classes, while you're making something to eat, it's something you can put aside, and since this is something that's an isolated part of your world, you can decide where it fits within the rest of your world and have a certain context to it. I'm cooking, and I'm going to look what the next message is from this really important discussion with this person who's wrong on the internet. But if you're in a VR headset, you have to be out to go out to do anything else, and then you have to go back in. And I think it precludes office work. A lot of people don't agree with that. We'll have to see if it works. People are working. I just saw this something promoted on the Atlantic Monthly, some kind of a section promoted by Teamwear or something about how VR is going to be in the office. And I think there's a lot of aspects of this that just don't really fit with prolonged office work. But if they have good ideas for that, we'll see. To me, I think there's a question of whether you need sensory immersion. When you're designing something, when you want to go forward with, and in the future, the things we will be creating, do you really need sensory immersion? There's all these, you have to be really careful about it so much. Is it really necessary for what you're doing? So I think for simulation, I'm kind of biased, but I think you probably need that. Remote training, there's a lot of aspects where VR can be very helpful. That's already being done and being researched. Teleoperation, probably sensory immersion can be very helpful. Although that being said, it might be better to have a bit of a space between you and what you're immersed in. To be able to say, okay, hold on, there's all these things that can't be represented by, there's too many dimensions to it, and I need to be careful, there's all these security things that I need to take care of. It might not be best done that way. For office work and socializing games, I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it's necessarily, I've not seen proof that the sensory immersion is that much an addition that's worth more of what's being sacrificed by having to have everything be, have all of the senses being taken out. Let's look at a test case.
Go on.
How am I with time?
You're doing fine.
Okay. So here's a test case of what I'm talking about. Sort of one division of what I'm talking about. So Project Cyberset. This was a project in Chile, 1971 to 1973. The Allende ministers, Allende was the president then, wanted to run their economy with computers. Wanted to modernize their economy. They invited Stafford Beer, a world-renowned cyberphysicist, to implement his managed model, the viable system model, and he worked on it, and a bunch of cyberphysicists in Chile worked on it, but it was cut short by the Pinochet coup in 1973. So we don't know the full extent of how much it would have succeeded or failed, but we have a certain snapshot of the process. So here's the plan they had. They wanted to do something really stark. They had this modernist control room where the certain ministers would be, or heads of an office, of a ministry, would be immersed with all this information around them. They'd have all these displays telling them what's going on. I imagine if they had VR back then, they would say, yes, let's put VR on this, let's put headsets on everybody. Represent all the economy visually, sorry. And that was the plan, that was the idea, representing everything graphically, having all these things that, all this high-tech stuff. The constraints were Chile had very few computers. They had plenty of telex machines. I hope this is not something naughty, but telex machines were basically, they were basic keyboard and printing terminals that you could call another number or go through a leased line and communicate with text. You'd send text messages, you'd receive text messages. It was, I think they had a 5-bit code or something like that for just sending textual messages back and forth. They had a lot of them for some reason. So in order to start something rolling, they started with a hybrid system. They said, okay, we'll work on all the computation and simulation and all of the fancy Star Trek stuff. But also in the meantime, let's network everything with telex machines and start with that and see what that does. So we can get all the modernism and start right. So they worked on it, and then in October 1972, there's this huge strike by right-wingers and middle-class truck owners. They basically tried to shutter the economy by blocking roads. Now, this is Chile. It's very narrow, so it's very easy to create a choke point by blocking just a few roads. We're talking the 70s, there weren't that many roads to begin with, so it would have been very easy to shutter the economy, except that they had this telex network, so they could bypass all. They didn't need to. They could call, but they could also send actual text and have documentation of how they were communicating back and forth. So they were able to coordinate going around blockages. You could see, okay, the 3 roads here, these 2 are blocked, so move from the other side. Or, okay, let's up production in this factory to go here instead of using this factory because this place is blocked. A lot of this, they could plan a nationwide response to this. And since they could, they made it possible for the economy to keep rolling for much longer than they could otherwise. And that allowed them to get to it. They still had to compromise with people to get something, but they had a better position because they weren't completely stopped by that. And that meant that Fernando Flores, the person in charge in Chilean government, in charge of Stephenson and the Ministry of Economy, changed his perception of how Stephenson was. So instead of seeing it as, okay, let's go on and be all modernistic, it was, okay, this is the technology we have right now, and let's use it as kind of, we're going to use it as a supplement to everything else that we have, and it wasn't the top priority. And there's a long story about that, and it's worth reading on. But the moral, as I see it, is you don't have to have Star Trek tools, like a bridge to computerize the economy. Text-based network, can have remote actors working communally as long as they understand what they're trying to do and are able to interpret and immerse themselves in this network by having shared vision and just a way of properly communicating. So this is the conclusion of this. So I think in VR is everywhere. I think the tool needs to be fit to the job, and this is. Bigger discussion than I have right now, but I think it's better sometimes to have the user have more control over immersion, and I feel that VR on some level takes a lot of that control away. It's kind of on the opposite side of, say, a book where the user has a lot of control over immersion. They can just stop it at any time, the bookmark, which is important technology, and read the media later. And a lot of the effort is mental, versus the other side is VR. Your senses are taking over, and you're basically your ability as a user, as an interactor, to decide how much you're immersed and how you're immersed is small. So that's it for the talk.
Any questions?
Any questions? Yes.
If you had an opportunity to check out VR chat, it would definitely match your criteria for virtual actors in the virtual space.
I haven't had a chance to play around with it that much now. Well, I haven't used VR chat. Unfortunately, I don't have a VR rig at home. I do have one at work, and mostly I use it to debug our particular application. So, yeah.
The third form of VR you mentioned,
Telepresence.
telepresence. Does that require you to be transmitting sensory data back and forth? What separates it from just standard remote control?
It's the sensory data. It's more of it does require a bit of the sensory replacement and putting yourself so that you feel you're inside some external thing. The difference between that and say unqualified VR is that it's not an entirely virtual world. It's something else that's out there, and you're experiencing being inside of that. There's a kind of an out-of-body experience that comes with that. It might be possible to have some of that without the VR headsets, but with the I think on some level, from what I understand, the sensory feedback was one of the more important things, like having something and seeing that your movement becomes something else. And there was where did I hear this? Did I hear this here, or was I reading something else? Where there's this famous experiment with the rubber hand, where if you have a certain mediation system,
no, I think I've heard it where people will.
The phantom hand.
Phantom hand kind of thing.
Yeah.
If you set the system up right, you can feel like some kind of an artificial thing is actually part of it. And I think that's what makes the telepresence more a step beyond just remote controlling a drone, like looking at a drone and moving it side to side. I mean, there's a certain level of immersion in the activity, but you don't feel transported into it in the same way that telepresence is supposed to be. Yes.
Speculatively speaking.
Good, because that's most of the stuff.
Yes. Speculatively speaking, what do you think will be the next sensory input that VR, AR, and MR are going to tackle next? So, as an example, obviously we have a pretty darn good handle of sight and hearing, but do you think at some point we'll get touch, pain, taste, smell, ability to locate your body part while having your eyes closed, balance, so on and so forth.
So
extra limbs like a tail.
Yeah, extra limbs.
So it's hard to say. I think the problem with taste and smell is just how wide the range of things you need to create and how consumable the things you create
They're
are.
chemical too.
Because you have to create molecules, like additional molecules that go into say the nose, and then they're gone. So, and then you have all these combinations. You have different materials, and maybe they'll find some kind of a combination that has enough of a range that's kind of like. So, for example, the reason we have digital color management, the reason that we can project things and move all these things around without it being a ridiculous expense is because people have, for the most part, three light sensors, three light distributive sensors. So the color space is way more limited than the actual space of possible electromagnetic pulses. So if we find some kind of a combination like that has enough range to cover the human smell and human taste, then maybe it'll be possible to do that. With taste, I think there's actually five sensors on the tongue, so maybe it'll be possible to have one molecule dedicated to all of them and then just measure how much you need from each of them. With smell, I'm not sure how it works. But again, there's all these consumables that are involved, and it'll be even less pleasant to share that with other people than the already somewhat unpleasant sharing of sweaty headset.
I'm sure our physical capabilities will be so excellent in the future that we can literally make electromagnetic waves feel like mass.
Well, I mean, that will require some more. Well, so what I think what is actually more likely than having more inputs is, I think induced synesthesia, I think would be maybe a better way to look at it. So a while ago, somebody put an image on Twitter that shows a GIF or GIF. I'm not sure how to pronounce that.
Zeif.
GILF. Nice place in Ontario. So it has a small power pylon jumping over wires between bigger pylons. And the way the image goes, everybody who's watched it feels like they're hearing it, but it doesn't have any audio component. But certain visual combinations of visuality turn into something that feels a bit like sound. And I feel like if that with sound, so with sound and sight, people can already lose their balance with visual cues, but because of how they don't fit with how the body sees it. So you feel lack of balance due to a sense that isn't balance-based because it's basically playing on your expectations. I feel like a better understanding of how the various senses interact with each other might be a better way to go to capture more and more of that.
Is that kind of similar to how our sense of smell attributes towards sense of taste?
Kind of, but it's a bit different because, well, kind of, yeah. It's somewhere. It's not everything gets set up completely separately. It all gets merged into this sense of how the world is around. So I think that might be better. That being said, I'm not sure if there's a good way of going around that with habit, with feeling that you're touching things. And there's also the issue of reaching out to people with disabilities that might not enable them to use a lot of these senses and still cater to them. For example, if you're blind, you can still have a VR experience. It just means that that there's a lot of three-dimensional aspects to sound. It's not just a matter of left and right. It's a matter of of certain patterns and how the sound works that mimic how your ear responds to noises from different directions. So, there's a lot to it, but I think I would say so for example, something that would give you a limited sense of touch reaction, if done correctly, might be able to go a longer way. There's all these ways of weirdly playing around with touching different parts of the body to get these sensations that seem like something greater than that. I'd say that's probably what there is. There's a lot of research that's already been done on making certain reactions feel like there's this. One of my sources for doing this, I guess, research. This book from '91, so a while ago, about virtual reality by Howard Reingold. Howard Reingold. It's a big history. It covers a lot of virtual reality until that point. It's somewhat tragically optimistic about VR in '91. One of the things described there is some kind of a box with a stick, and the software can allow you to feel like the stick is hitting different things. You can feel like you're sliding it on ice cubes versus on the edge of a rock versus. There's a bunch of different things. So a lot of these things are possible. A lot of the question is how far you can go with it, how cheap you can make it, how easy for the consumer you can make it usable. That depends on how these work and how much it would be worth it for people to invest in that. So, for example, in flight simulation, people are willing to pay enough to get serious flight training. Can pay enough to have a 360 moving cockpit that you put the person into, and then they can feel a lot of the movement of the aircraft with something that actually moves like the aircraft, other than translation, but it is rotation, it moves around a bit. So if you want something that will replace that, it needs to be cheaper than that, and I mean it needs to be able to compete with that, but go beyond that, because
it needs electromagnetic waves to act like mass, so you can actually sit on electromagnetic waves.
Well, this is I think the best type of electromagnetic. This is electromagnetism holding you up.
Fair.
Matter is basically electromagnetic waves in abeyance on someone.
Atoms of different charge and staying away from each other. That's pretty much what matter is.
Pretty much, yeah. So it's kind of it's things sticking together and staying away from each other, and it's all mediated. Most of it is mediated by electromagnetism. There's a tiny but cumulatively important effect of gravity. There is the very strong but limited distance nuclear force. There's the weaker nuclear force, and somehow it all works out. But there's a lot of electromagnetism in us being in matter. So.
But yeah, it would be nice at some point if it was possible to just like carry a small box and you hit a switch and it somehow turns into a huge cockpit that you can put yourself in.
Yes, that would be really nice.
That would be the best VR experience ever.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I would have gone to if I decided to go into different media is the holodeck in Star Trek, which has some kind of techno-babbling kind of radiation field that becomes matter-like as long as it's inside the holodeck, but then when you go out, it disappears. There's clearly more going on there because the holodeck is constrained, but you feel like you can virtually walk for miles. But I mean, in reality, I'm not sure if that's. I mean, there's types of artificial matter, but they're still made up of some kind of matter. So I don't know. A lot of this is, a lot of it is things being developed, things coming out, and then seeing how things work. Also, I mean, another direction to go that I didn't go with this, and I guess I could have added it into this talk if I had more time and more ways to track down the books. So there's this book by Stanislaw Lem. Not sure if I'm pronouncing his name correctly either way, but he's a world-renowned Polish science fiction author. Solaris is probably one of his more famous works, but he wrote a bunch of them. A lot of hilarious satire hidden inside of science fiction. And one of them was Fictional Congress, and there was a movie that came out called Congress that's it's sort of based on that. But the idea was that it's virtual reality through drugs. So people are given, it's capturing experience in chemicals and then ingesting them and then having your brain create them for you. So at some level, it's immersing yourself in a book, but chemically induced book. So on some level, it could be possible to, if somebody is given, because because there's all these psychotropic drugs that induce synesthesia and induce hallucinations, and a combination between that and the right stimuli could create virtual reality that feels completely real, like in your dreams. But I'm not sure how well controlled you can make that computationally or at all. And B, it's not the kind of thing you can turn on and off. It's even worse than headsets in that regard. It's like you can't say, oh, I want to go on this I'm going to take the LSD for a 5-day trip, but in 2 days, oh wait a minute, I need to take this call. It doesn't really work that way.
You just have to go in deeper.
Yeah, but I mean, so another direction to go would be to just bypass this whole having specific senses and just say, okay, let's induce suggestibility in people and then control that. But again, that goes even further towards having the user, the interactor, having less control over the very fact of immersion, which is kind of this thing that I started thinking about more towards the end of creating this talk, and I haven't really built enough of a talk around that to express this.
There's some filling in of the senses, though, like when you pull that bow string and feeling the strain on the cord, even though it's not there.
Yeah, I mean, on some level, your brain is translating what you feel here into as if you're pulling it. So some combination of that can help in some cases. I just want to, one thing I want to say that in terms of the history of this talk, so I originally gave a very similar talk at a conference, a science fiction convention in Israel called Icon, and the impetus of this was originally was, well, I work in VR. I can give a talk to lay people about comparing VR and fiction and reality. I do VR. I like reading books with VR. That would work nicely. But then as I dug deeper, I started asking, well, it started this sense that there's all this supposition in all this fiction, and there's a lot of supposition in non-fiction. You can read in newspapers about VR being the final goal of immersion, being this is the best way that we can interact with computers, and this is the best way to artificially mediate with each other and with the world. And then I started thinking, well, I mean, in reality, that didn't quite work out as well. VR flopped for a while as far as the public world was concerned, for about 2 decades. Pretty much between the mid-90s, more or less, to mid-2010s when the Oculus started coming out. I mean, there was a lot of research being done, but it was outside the public eye and it wasn't as present.
It's being used in design quite a bit too.
Yeah. I mean, there's specific uses, definitely. I mean, Autodesk as a company basically started with the idea of using VR for designing 3D stuff, and if you were doing, they put a lot of their initial work into VR. Most 3D modelers weren't using, and I'm not sure if, I mean, there's more maybe now, but for a long time weren't using, VR headsets. They were using high definition screens, 2 or 3 of them, and more tablets for drawing and mice and keyboards. So after that talk ended, I kept thinking, and I had more reading to do about this, obviously, and I started thinking, in terms of how VR and immersion and all these dimensions of how people will interact in mediated ways are related to each other. So this is more of an elaboration of this, but this is very in media res. It's very in the middle of me thinking about these things. So I hope you enjoyed this. And if you have additional questions or complaints or suggestions of future reading, very happy to. I think I'm done.
Any other questions?